Bearcat Blitz, post July 4th holiday edition of the show. Hope everybody had a wonderful, wonderful patriotic celebration over the weekend. Recharge, ready to roll with Neil Meyer, my co host. I'm your host, Russ Heltman of Cincinnati Bearcats on SI. Check out the site there. Just look up Cincinnati Bearcats on SI, and you can check out Neil's coverage from the front office news as well, the frontofficenews.com, all the good Cincinnati Bearcats coverage, where you can find Neil's coverage of Big 12 football media days starting tomorrow, July 8th. Cincinnati Bearcats and their representatives will be on the field at the Star in Frisco, Texas, chopping it up with all of the media members there. We'll talk about that on today's show, along with a USA Today Big 12 quarterback ranking that has Brendan Sorsby outside of the top half of the Big 12. Fair or not? We'll discuss that on the show as well to get things going this week and not kick off the month of July, but we're getting into the month of July on the show, and we are getting closer and closer to the start of fall camp on the Bearcat Blitz program and UC football proper. Take a quick break here and then get into the full meat of the show here on Bearcat Blitz. Stick with us. Neil, you're about to get mobile down south to Texas to chat up with all the Big 12 representatives at Big 12 Football Media Days. We're getting close to the start of the season, about 6 weeks away from kickoff at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City against Nebraska and the Cornhuskers. And my big question, Neil, the big storyline for me entering Big 12 Media Days for this program is the offensive line. You and I have talked about it pretty substantially over the last couple months, so I won't harp on it too long here, but that's the big position group question on the board is who's going to be blocking for Scott Satterfield's running game and who's going to be blocking for Brendan Sorsby as he tries to up that deep ball production in 2025 and become a more well-rounded passer in general. And he's going to need time to throw that football if he wants to achieve those goals. That's the big question mark, Neil, is you have Joe Cotton, you have Evan Tangenstall, you likely have Tarantayo, and you likely have Gavin Gerhardt. Those look like the four options that are seemingly pretty entrenched. Tangenstall maybe a little bit less entrenched than the other three. And then that tackle position, it's going to be a large battle between large men and a strong group of guys, I think, and a strong place to be, Neil, considering you can just kind of roll the balls out and have at it for one position as opposed to having two or three or four murky positions going into fall camp. The Bearcats don't have that issue this coming, in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And I mean, the biggest thing for Cincinnati, right, is you talk about the offensive line. It's going to be crucial to see who's going to be up front in the trenches blocking this season for Brendan Sorsby and guys like Evan Pryor, Tawi Walker, to see what really sparks that Cincinnati offense, right? I mean, if you look down at the offensive line as of right now, right, it's never easy replacing a guy like Luke Kandra, who is now in the NFL, should have been drafted, now in the NFL, D'Artagnan Tinsley, NFL. It's never easy to replace the likes of those guys, John Williams, NFL, guys who have been so well knit together, to say the least. They have a lot of continuity together. That offensive line spent quality time 4 or 5 years together, some of them. And that's between John Williams, Gavin Gerhardt, D'Artagnan Tinsley spent the last 3 seasons up there in the trenches. This offensive line is only returning one starter from a season ago, essentially, in Gavin Gerhardt. And then you go out and you make your big splashes in the transfer portal, which was huge for Cincinnati, especially up front on the offensive line. And Russ, if I recall, Scott Satterfield alluded to it right about prior to spring ball about what it would essentially take to get a good offensive lineman to Cincinnati, right? He said if you want to get a good offensive lineman out of the transfer portal, you are going to have to fight with the other schools, right? Essentially the big names, the blue bloods. And that's what Cincinnati did to get Joe Cotton there to Clifton. And that's huge. But essentially, that was a position of need for them this offseason. You go and you get Tarantayo, who is an absolute freak. We've all seen the video in the weight room of him squatting, what was that, nearly 600 something pounds with Coach Nico Palazetti. That was huge. Evan Tangenstall looks to be like he is in the best shape of his playing career, and he looks like he is ready to contribute. He had spurts and moments last season, but he looks like he is ready to come in and make an immediate impact for this team this year. You go and you get Joe Cotton out of the portal, who's 6'7". But the biggest thing is for me, Russ, is what's that right tackle position going to look like? Is that going to be DeAndre Buford? Is that going to be a guy like Ethan Green even? And I think the difference from Cincinnati's offensive line from a season ago is the depth, right? We've heard Judea Million get mentioned from Scott Satterfield in press conference, and they go out and they add 6'8" junior Nolan Latalippe from Albany, who's 6'8", 315 pounds. Aiden Pastoriza could come in and play as a redshirt freshman, 6'6", 315 pounds. Then you have Ethan Green, like we mentioned, 6'6", 315 pounds. That's the thing for Cincinnati is I feel like they have quality depth at the offensive line position. Then you have Xavier Lozowicki, who could come in and make an impact on the outside. Zach Clark, Jake Wheelock. There's a lot of depth there for Cincinnati to kind of pluck and play with on the offensive line. And that was something they didn't have a season ago, right? They maybe had their 6 or 7 guys, but on top of it, when injuries hit, D'Artagnan Tinsley went down at times. Luke Kandra battled an injury throughout the season. When things went rough up there and people got banged up, that's when the offense started to trickle south for Cincinnati. And now that you see what they're doing in the weight room, you see what they did in the offseason, they are making it a priority to protect Brendan Sorsby and do everything they can to get this offense going and clicking on all cylinders heading into year 3 in the Big 12.
What's your top storyline, Neil?
Top storyline, obviously, we're talking about the offensive line, but for me, it's between the offensive line and the secondary. I think that was crucial as well, right? You lose Jordan Young to Arkansas, who was arguably your best cover corner. That was a big loss for Cincinnati. But I'm very interested to see Coach Hicks in action with this secondary unit on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's going to be the biggest takeaway, right? Year 1 to year 2, Tyson Vite's defense, we saw what it was like last year. But now that guys have 1 to 2 years in this system, it's going to be really interesting to see how do guys kind of come together there in that secondary. I think that's the biggest takeaway, right? We're talking offensive line. We've talked offensive line most of the summer. But I feel like between the offensive line and the secondary, that is going to be the big storylines. And then maybe right below it is going to be the revamped wide receiver room, right? And I think those are going to be the three main storylines for Cincinnati, especially down here in Frisco, Texas, for media days this week.
A lot of fun comments, I'm sure, on the way from the Bearcats contingent, which includes the likes of Brendan Sorsby. They also have Gavin Gerhardt in the fold this week, Joe Royer and Dante Corleone joining head coach Scott Satterfield in Texas. And we will have coverage across both outlets, the frontofficenews.com and Cincinnati Bearcats on SI for you to check out across the next few days, getting those stories up. Taking a quick break here on Bearcat Blitz, and then we will get into the USA Today ranking, which may be underrating Brendan Sorsby just a little bit in the hierarchy of Big 12 quarterbacks. Stick with us right here on the Believe Network. Rolling into the back half of the show this week on Bearcat Blitz ahead of Big 12 Media Days. We also had a USA Today ranking of the Big 12 quarterbacks going into the 2025 season. Jordan Mendoza broke down all 16 signal callers, projected signal callers on the list, and he had the Bearcats signal caller Brendan Sorsby ninth on his list. Neil, are you feeling like it's a little disrespectful? Do you think it's justified? How are we feeling about Brendan Sorsby being ranked ninth out of 16 quarterbacks on the board here?
Honestly, Russ, I think it's a I think Brendan Sorsby is being overlooked in this ranking. And the reason I say that is because we saw the progression he made in year 1 to year 2, right? But there's so many uncircum on the circumstances that are going out in the Big 12 right now. The Jake Ratcliffe situation, obviously, he is one of the top quarterbacks in the Big 12. Everybody knows that. But with everything going on, that's an uncertainty right now. I think you can say if Jake Ratcliffe it does take this suspension or whatever might happen for him, Brendan Sorsby will probably jump him in terms of stats and whatnot, have a better season than him. But overall, I think Brendan Sorsby is arguably one of the top six, top seven quarterbacks in this conference, right? So overall, I think it's a low rating for Brendan Sorsby, but I think realistically, Cincinnati has a chance to really step the quarterback play up this year. Obviously, I know a lot of people are looking at Arizona State's Sam Levitt as one. Then you have Josh Hoover, Rocco Bett. I think those are your top four, right? But I think Brendan Sorsby should be higher than Noah Fafita.
Yeah,
I
I'm
th
with
I
you.
think that's an easy one because you look at what Arizona did last season. They just threw the ball up to Teteora McMillan, right? So overall, I think realistically, Brendan Sorsby could have the potential to be a top six quarterback in this league, right? Nobody knows what's going to go on at Colorado with Julian Lewis. Is it going to be
Yeah.
Caden Salter? Nobody knows what's going to be out there. But I think it's safe to say your top three quarterbacks in this conference right now are going to be Sam Levitt at one, Josh Hoover at two, Rocco Bett at three. You might see Baylor Sawyer Robertson at four. I think those are kind of maybe the top four. But I think it's safe to say Brendan Sorsby could be up there in the top five, top six at the end of the year if things play well into Cincinnati. And what I mean by state, if things go well, you get an offensive line that stays completely healthy. You get your receiver room that stays healthy. And right now, Russ, after spring ball, it looks like that receiver room is, I wouldn't say light years ahead of where they were last year, but it's definitely a night and day difference from where
Yeah,
they were last year, right?
firmly leveled up in the receiver room across
Right.
in terms of the at least floor of the talent that we're going to see on the field this season for sure.
Correct. So overall, with what Cincinnati did in the offseason, I think they put themselves in position to where Brendan Sorsby, if he performs well, he could be a top five quarterback, top six quarterback within the Big 12.
Yeah, running through the top nine down to Sorsby here, you got Sam Leavitt of Arizona State at one, Sawyer Robertson at two, Baylor, just absolute scorching finish for Sawyer Robertson. Had 17 touchdowns, almost 1,600 yards in the final 6 games of the season. Justified number two pick. Josh Hoover at number three. I'm fine with that. Rocco Becht at number four. That looks good as well. He has been consistently strong for Iowa State over the past couple seasons. And then it's where you start to get where Brendan Sorsby, I think, may have a case, like you were saying, Neil. When you get to Avery Johnson at five, Baron Morton at six, Jalen Daniels at seven, Noah Fifita at eight, and then Sorsby at nine. I would put Sorsby above Fifita just based on his rushing floor alone. I think he's a better option at quarterback this coming season than the
I
Arizona
think
passer.
personally too, Russ, while we're speaking of this,
Yeah.
you can put him higher than Jalen Daniels even essentially too,
Yeah,
because
because you don't know what you're going to get. Brendan Sorsby, we
exactly.
know, is durable. The dude plays through injury, he plays through getting banged up, and he's able to rush that football and still take those hits at a better rate than a guy and a similar rusher in Jalen Daniels. I mean,
And
lost
Jalen
all of his
Daniels has not
2023
been
season, right? He hasn't been Jalen
he hasn't been
Daniels.
fully healthy in 3 years.
Right, exactly. So I would put him, I would say Sorsby has a case to be seven at least. And then it's a fun debate, Neil, and this might be a fun debate all season long between Johnson, Morton, and Sorsby as that fifth best quarterback in the Big 12. Johnson has a similar kind of profile to Sorsby. They're similar type players. Johnson, I think, just gets the nod because he performed a little bit more consistently at a younger
Mm.
age last season. And then Baron Morton obviously blows away Sorsby in the passing attack with nearly 3,300 yards last season and did not turn the ball over very much considering how much they passed the football. So I think you could firmly put Sorsby at seven on this list and in the top half of the Big 12 quarterbacks. And then I think you can make a case for Johnson and Morton to be firmly ranked at the right spot at five and six, but Sorsby also can get in the mix there, depending on how you want to argue it. So with a top, I mean, in our eyes, Neil, when we're looking at these rankings, a top 5 to 7 quarterback in the Big 12, you should make a bowl game in that scenario. If you have one of those guys in this conference and in a conference that's so nip tuck back and forth and can be so tight at the end of these football games, you need a stone cold killer like one of these top half quarterbacks can be at times and what the top three quarterbacks are most of the time. And Brendan Sorsby should be able to execute at a high level enough, considering how we view him, to be able to get this team to a bowl game in 2025-26. Real quick before we close up shop, Neil, had some new power rankings drop based on market projections, the kind of betting market projections from PFF. They have Cincinnati ranked 70th nationally among all FBS teams with a strength of schedule ranking 57th toughest in the entire country. They projected them to win just 5.79 games, giving them a 53.4% chance to make a bowl game this season. I mean, Neil, they are going to be right on the edge from most prognosticators, I would guess, of getting to that bowl game in year three of Scott Satterfield. Um, and I think it kind of, as we close up shop here, Neil, and get ready for the storylines and all the comments ahead of Big 12 Media Days, year three of a program funded like this in the Big 12, you have to at least get to 6 wins. That's the bar for improvement. And most fans, Neil, I'm seeing this across a lot of the projections and fans just starting to realize football's coming up and trying to think of what their expectations should be. Most fans are expecting 7, 8, 9 wins, considering just what this program has been, what it is trying to be, and the investment in this program as highlighted by the IPF and all of the boosting, all of the NIL funds. Fans are ready to see a real improvement. And given the talent on the team, the schedule, and the overall computer prognostications, it's going to come down to kind of who wants it more in some of these instances in these close games that Cincinnati ended up losing last year and is trying to win at least one or maybe two more of them to guarantee themselves a bowl bid in 2025. We'll get to our full projections for the full season in a couple of weeks after we get into the thick of fall camp. But fans, Neil, the expectation is 6 wins is the minimum bar, and most are, from what I'm seeing, looking for 7 to 8 wins as the true successful good season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've talked about it multiple times that you look down at this schedule, Cincinnati has an arguably a great shot of winning 6 games, but it's going to
Right.
come down to the non-conference game, right? It's going to come down to how they perform week one versus Nebraska. They get Eddie George's first road game versus Bowling Green in week two.
That's
It's
right.
going to be an interesting season to say the least, right? But I think the thing that fans are excited about was things kind of playing to Cincinnati's favor, essentially, right? We know Nippert Stadium is one of the most historic arenas in all of college football and all of sports history, right? But if they just protect Nippert Stadium, Russ, they will put themselves in position to win a bowl game just by itself, right? If you win all 7 games at Nippert Stadium
Yeah,
and you
you're in.
protect home court, you are legitimately in a bowl game just
Even
by
six
taking
and
care.
one, you can give up a loss at home. You're still going to be going bowling
Yep.
and
You
giving us a
just got to
chance to cover a game in December.
take care of business at home. I think that's going to be the biggest thing and one of the biggest things we talk about all season, right? Take care of Nippert Stadium. You protect home field, you are going to be in great position for a bowl game. And especially with how well this season kind of came to fruition for Cincinnati. Now you look at their schedule for the first 2 years, Russ. I mean, in year one they had Oklahoma, they had a gauntlet year one in the Big 12. And then year two, there were some games that they could have won, right? They put themselves in position to essentially and arguably be in a bowl game. They just couldn't close in the final minutes of those said games. But with how the schedule looks into their favor right now, there is there is great possibility that we see Cincinnati in a bowl game for the first time since 2022.
Optimism entering Big 12 Media Days on Bearcat Blitz. We'll have you covered with all of the most interesting comments and stories from the festivities in Texas. When we conclude the back half of this week's programming, we'll probably go on. I imagine we'll go back to Fridays once we get
Mhm.
Neil back in town, hopefully safe and sound, returning from his trip to Texas. Safe travels to Neil and safe week to everybody. Enjoy it and try not to melt out there in the summer sun. We'll keep you cool and entertained on the Bearcat Blitz program when we return later on this week. Enjoy, everybody. Have a good one.